And so I encourage people who are listening, who are thinking as a parent or as a colleague, maybe you've witnessed this and you're not necessarily the person in the receiving or the bullying lens. But I think we should be witnessing to workplace bullying and school bullying and play yard bullying, whatever that is, as often as we possibly can.
Yeah, and I would definitely agree with that. And the big piece that in the workplace especially that gets forgotten is when you agree upon something verbal, it's only
Hmm.
between you and the person that you're talking to. And so documentation is the biggest thing, and we talk about
Good.
that in the book. You need to document everything. And some of the times you need to send that email even if you've already talked in person, you already had a meeting, you need some kind of
Mhm.
written documentation to fall back on, because what we experienced is our child was in a private school, and so talk about church and state and trying
Mm,
to like, but they spoke about grace and giving
mm,
grace and grace and grace. Well, my child was in upper elementary, and so this child knew better. It hit all four things constantly when she was doing this. And so just making sure that we had that to go back to, oh, remember in this email or in this meeting, you don't always have to send an email, but making sure you keep track of it, because honestly, humans do forget, but then
yeah,
sometimes there's a lot of that sweeping under the rug. And so
right.
just making sure that you cover all your bases so that you are safe in everything that you say.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Rachel, because I do want people to be aware if you are in a space where you're like, well, I can't talk about my faith here. I can't utilize this as a resource, or I can't bring this to my boss or our counselors or our teacher or my school's principal, any of those things. This is a faith founded book, but it is not a faith forward book. The language that's used is very platonic for anyone to be able to receive. But the fact that you mentioned essentially bullying in our churches, right? Bullying amongst other brothers and sisters, like that is a real thing. And
Mhm.
I just think it's another layer to where this mission could come into play when it comes to these rich conversations. But I don't want anyone to think while we're speaking through the faith of what it is founded on, that this can't be a tool that's used in a non-faith oriented space, because 100% can. And Rachel is very intentional with that. Actually, I think there was some wrestling that potentially happened in that regard. Rachel, do you want to share with fellow authors who are listening, thinking about it from that lens of what should I share, what should I not? And my faith is the most important thing to me. And at the same time, I want this to be a tool for so many people.
Yeah, so the central theme that we kept was light, because we all, as believers, we know where that light's coming from and where that truth is coming from. And so I wanted to keep that. We had a different cover, and I said, no, there needs to be light on this cover. That is what I want. I want the darkness to reside. And I actually have a reel that has went out, and it talks about darkness can't overtake darkness. It's the light that prevails. And so I wanted to keep that piece in there. However, I taught in the public school for lots of years. And I know that if it was scripture after scripture after scripture, they could not even use that in training
Right.
for their teachers. And so I did not want that to be a hindering block to advocate and move forward in the school system. Also, I had a counselor that endorsed it, and I want her to be able to share it with others so that it can be a resource that they hand to their client. Because, yes, they have those sessions, but you don't have a session every day. And so they can say, hey, refer to chapter 2 today. We'll come back next week. I wanted to be able to do that. And then ultimately, I went to teaching school. I got my bachelor's. I got my master's, and I never once had any formal training on bullying. And so I want it to be a resource for them so that they don't get trained like me of, oh, well, just make sure bullying doesn't happen in your classroom. That's all I had.